Hi, everyone. How many of you know Ansible? Very good. And how many of you use Ansible?
Oh, quite a lot.
How many use Ansible for networking?
So it's going to be a good session then. Okay.
Well, Ansible is known by its capabilities to manage servers. Usually everyone uses it for that, to manage virtual servers, bare metal, to deploy those servers, to deploy the applications that run on those servers, to configure those applications or the servers where the applications run on. But how many of you are working with networking every day? Up, a little more. Nah, not so many.
And how many of you are usually blocked or depend a lot on the networking operation guys? So they have to create an IP, a VLAN, or whatever for you. So I guess that probably a few, okay? So as Beatriz was saying, Ansible is not something which is usually used for the network, but we are going to demonstrate how you can use Ansible for the network configuration as well, and how you can avoid that kind of bottlenecks that you might have from time to time because of the networking team.
Okay. So, well, as I said, and you see, there are many people that it's dependent on networking. You are working on networking department, you are using the networking department every time, or you are blocked by them. But, well, the automation is not something that happens in networking usually. When I go to the customers, they usually work with automation. They automate their service provision and so on. But networking, no. And that is strange. It's so important. We have seen it. So we go for the traditional network operation. How that happens? Usually, it's a flow like this one. Someone design a feature. Someone then next take that design and create the software for that feature. Then someone test it, and at some point, someone faced the network department. I need an IP, I need an open port, I need something from the IP department. And it takes a lot of time. The network department becomes the bottleneck. And it's just an IP. It's just an open port. It's to open a port. What is happening there? Well, your request is not the only one. And usually, the network department is composed by 3 or 5 people, not more. They are designing the network. They are integrating the network. They are deploying your request. It's so much work. And that is not all. They have to attack many different nodes. They have to attack a switch, 3 routers, 1 firewall, whatever, one by one, CLI by CLI, command by command. And each command comes from a different vendor. Cisco, Juniper, Palo Alto, whatever. Different commands, different knowledge. It takes a lot of time, and it has a reason.
Okay, so is there anyone here who works for a telco, for a telecommunications company? Okay, so I'm not going to feel that lonely. So usually we think that I belong to the telco area. So I've been working for telco for like 15 years, and we usually think that we are special. And we are not really that special. So it's not so different what we are doing compared to the traditional IT. There is only one difference for us in telco, and is that in our case, the network is the service. So network is not something that our customers are using, but the network is the service that we are providing. So that's actually the only difference that we have with the traditional IT or enterprise companies. But in telco, we also need to embrace all these new automation capabilities that we are planning to have in telco, in IT as well. Why? Mainly because the scale is growing a lot. So in telco, we are planning to move to the edge. So this means that we are going to have like thousands of sites. So we need to manage a lot of equipment which is going to be remote. So maybe you have a switch, a router, which is going to be in a completely isolated location. So that's also an important thing to take into account. And you need to automate that because it's impossible to manage them manually. Then in telco, we are doing something, we're a bit behind IT when it comes to virtualization, but we are now starting that journey, that trip. So we are virtualizing our networks. That's what we call NFV. With NFV, we are adding a lot of new layers to the network because now we have a virtualization layer, we have virtual storage, we have an SDN. So we also need to automate all the different parts and try to integrate all of them together. And of course, we are trying to do all that while we try to keep the same SLAs. So I guess probably you don't even remember the last time that your mobile network was not working. So that's something which is always there. It's always working because we have a lot of strict SLAs, and we need to comply with them because usually, for example, we are having emergency service or things like that. So we still need to be on the IT side and try to automate all the things as much as we can.
So what do we need to change from that traditional operation to that next generation network operation? Well, the main thing to do is change the culture. You expected Ansible? No, it's change the culture. We had to change from silos, where everyone works at his or her department, and just talk with the rest of the departments when it is needed, to talk, to communicate, to be a community, a culture of community. We had to change from proprietary solutions, CLI by CLI, command by command, to a solution that is a standard with a language that give us the opportunity to communicate with the rest of departments. We had to go with DevOps to avoid the manual work. We had to go with automation. Automation will help us a lot to change for the next generation operations. And Ansible is an option, is a great tool that you can use for automation. And we can go for that. We are going to tell you about Ansible.
So a lot of you already know what is Ansible, so we are going just to do a very brief introduction and a very high level. But, oops, sorry, wrong button. Okay, this is the right one. So what is Ansible? So Ansible is actually a framework that you can use to automate whatever you want on your enterprise. So actually you can automate a lot of things with Ansible, and you are going to use what we call an Ansible playbook. So this is the script or the text file that you are going to use to create your automations, okay? Ansible is based on 3 very important pillars. So first of them is that it's a very simple language. So we most of the times don't even call Ansible a language. So Ansible is a framework. You are not going to be actually coding. This is not programming. So it's based on YAML, and you are going to be creating playbooks, which are text files that you can easily understand. So Ansible is a language, a framework, which is designed to be easy to understand by persons, by humans. So that's the first thing which is important to understand about Ansible. Second thing is that even if Ansible is kind of simple and easy, it's really powerful. So you can automate a lot of things using Ansible. We are going to say a bit of details of what you can automate with Ansible, but it's really powerful. So you can do a lot of things. You can automate the things that you are doing on your day-to-day basis. And the last one, I think it's super important, because with Ansible you don't need to deploy an agent. So there is no software, there is nothing that you need to deploy on the machine or on the endpoint that you want to manage. So this is also avoiding security risks. For example, you don't need to manage the life cycle of this software which is running there, and you're also saving some computational power, so you don't need to be running any agent, okay? So it's important to keep in mind these 3 pillars. From the very high-level perspective, Ansible is built of 2 different parts. So on this picture on the bottom, you have Ansible Engine. So Ansible Engine is actually the framework, the language, all the tools that you are going to be using to create your automations. And then on top of that, you have Ansible Tower, which is going to provide mainly a graphical user interface and an API. And the API is super important because it's going to allow you to do a lot of integrations, like the one that we are going to show here. And it's also providing you a lot of features that you need to have in your enterprise environment when you're running automation. So for example, you don't want each of your users to know the credential for the router or for the switch or whatever. So Ansible Tower can do that for you. So you can manage the credentials, you can have the logs, you can have a lot of control over your automation. This is the very high-level view of what is Ansible and how Ansible is working. So when you are working with Ansible, you or your users are going to be creating playbooks, okay? So the playbook is that file that you are going to be writing. It's a text file, so as we are going to see later, you can put this file under version control on Git, for example, and you are going to be using all the tools that you have on the engine, on Ansible Engine, which is like your automation framework. So the most important thing is that you are going to be using modules. So modules are all the tools, all the different, let's say, like libraries, if you want to make the comparison to Python, for example. It's all the libraries that you have to do things, like create a file, make sure that this user already exists, make sure that this virtual IP already exists on the load balancer. So those are tools, libraries that you have to make sure that you can create your automations in a very easy way. Of course, you have the tools, but you also need to have an inventory. You also need to know over which equipments or software or servers that you have on your environment, you are going to be executing your automations. So that's the inventory, okay? I'm going to come back to this slide later, but I think this is enough so far. So you have a playbook which is using modules, and you are automating things on your inventory, okay, which has a view of what do you have. What can you do with Ansible? I was saying before that you can do actually a lot of things with Ansible. So you can automate how to deploy applications. That's probably the thing that you know the most. But you can do a lot more. So you can do your configuration management. So you can have everything under version control, and then you will be using, for example, infrastructure as code. Because everything that you have on your infrastructure is going to be in a text file, and you can very easily version that file. Or you can check what had changed from yesterday, for example, if something is going wrong. You can, as we're going to show in this demo, you can do the continuous delivery and the continuous integration using Ansible. You can only use Ansible with Tower, but probably you want to integrate this with other tools. So this is what we are going to show on the demo. And the last one is really important because we are investing a lot on security and compliance. And you can use Ansible to automate the security testing and compliance and even to integrate multiple security devices together using Ansible as the glue between the multiple parts, okay? Of course, I was mentioning the inventory yesterday before, so you can do all these things on many places. So you can work on your internal clouds, on the private cloud. You can work on virtualization environments, on the public cloud. So you can work with many of the tools and the infrastructure that you are already using. You are not going to be changing the way that you are working, but you are just going to automate what you are usually doing manually. I was mentioning before that with Ansible, you are going to be automating what you are already doing. So the technology that you are using is that what you are going to be automating. So I was mentioning the cloud before, so you can automate, for example, AWS, you can automate DigitalOcean, Google, you can automate, for example, OpenStack, VMware environments. So this is not only something which is focusing on the Red Hat ecosystem, so you can automate a lot of things, as you can see. You can even automate Windows, which is something that is getting a lot of traction lately, because, for example, you can automate how do you manage the patching or how do you update a Windows machine. So this is something which is also important. Then we are going to cover a bit the network. So this is what Beatriz is going to be covering later on, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. But you can do a lot of things with Ansible. So if you have any questions, just let us know, and probably there is a way to do that with Ansible. I mentioned that I was going to come back to this slide. On this slide, there is something that I wanted to highlight, which is the inventory and the CMDB that you have there. When you're planning to have everything under version control, you need to have all the information on a single place. So probably you are using like Excel files to have the IPs, you are using text files, so that's probably not the best way to do it. So when you are planning to automate things, I don't care if this is with Ansible or with any other language, you need to take into account that you probably need a single source of truth. So you need to have a place where you have all the information about your environment, which applications I want to deploy, which are the IPs, which are my network information. So this is what we call the single source of truth, SOT, okay? And this is also allowing to split, in some way, the work that different teams are doing with Ansible and on how to deploy the applications. Because that's also something which is really important and that we mention a lot, that Ansible is allowing to have a single language across all the different organizations or teams that you have on your company. So we are going to cover this a bit later on the demo, but on the left-hand side, you have the developers, which are going to be working on the applications. They are the ones who have the knowledge on how to deploy the applications. So they are actually going to have the inventory file, the CMDB. I want to deploy this application here together with this one. So they are going to be the ones which are going to create this single source of truth, this information that I need. And then this information is going to be implemented by the operators, the one who actually know how to deploy this application, for example, into a Linux server, into an OpenShift application platform using containers, or even how to manage the network when it comes to apply all these configurations. So the operators are going to be the ones which are going to be creating the playbooks to consume that information that the developers are providing and to create a DevOps infrastructure. So actually, you are not going to deploy anything manually, but everything is going to be automated because the teams are working together.
Well, you heard about CI/CD and networking. We have been talking about Ansible. So let's start. What is Ansible for networking? Do you know how many modules do we have for networking in Ansible? Any number, a percentage? 30% of the modules are for networking, network modules. You can see here. The main vendors are here, and there are coming more. Everyone recognizes the use of Ansible, even the networking vendors. So everyone is developing modules to facilitate the work for networking department. A10, Juniper, Cisco, Fortinet, Palo Alto, etc., etc. And how can we use them? Well, there are many use cases. These are some of them. For example, when I come to a customer and I ask them, how many servers do you have? How many routers do you have? They say, I don't know. Does it happen to you? It happens to me. Well, with Ansible, you can retrieve all that information from your inventory. You can know what is happening there with the facts. You can know what happens with the interfaces, how they are configured, and so on. Retrieve information is a very, very useful use case for you and for everyone. On the other hand, we can check and validate our configuration. We can compare our configurations, the one that we have as reference, to what it is running on the network node. Also, for sure, and of course, invocate their playbooks and run your task. What you define on your playbooks, remember, the task that you are going to run on your nodes, network nodes or servers, then you can run them and be effective with what you want to configure on provision. And on the other hand, this is the one that I like a lot, continuous compliance and remediation. Well, let's start first with one thing. Do you know the check mode for Ansible? The Ansible people. Just one person? Well, the check mode is a mode really very, very useful. Why? Because it's a simulation of what you are running. You can run the playbooks, you can be effective and change things, or you can check what you are running. So you are simulating what is happening. You get the same output that you get when you are running the playbook. So you can identify what is happening there. There is something that you have to know, is idempotence. Idempotence is something that is a quality that has Ansible that is very useful. How does it come? Well, Ansible works in that way. You define a state, and then you run anything if it is needed. That means if I have something in that state, I'm not running anything. That means performance and more control over what I'm doing. For example, I want port 80 open. So Ansible comes, see, the port is open, I'm not doing anything. But if it is closed, I'm opening it. Okay, that is the way that it works. Why is this important for the check mode? With the check mode, I get all information from the logs. In the logs, there are 3 main colors. They are easy. Green, okay. Yellow, change. Red, fail. Well, we don't like the red, never. But in this case, what it is important is the change and the okay. If I check what is happening there, I get the logs, I want the port 80 open. If it is green, it's okay. I didn't do anything. If it is yellow, it's change. So it wasn't open. You can check what you have at your network nodes and then run it when you need it. For example, running, not checking, in the night with a schedule. With Tower, you can fix a schedule to run those playbooks in the night, for example. So that means compliance with the check, remediation with the run and the schedule in the night. You don't have to work there. And the last thing is the integrations. Tower gives you an API. I think we have already heard about the APIs this morning. You know a lot about the APIs. And it gives you the opportunity to integrate Ansible with all your environment. And that is very important.
So I guess probably you already know a lot about Jenkins. So what is Jenkins? So Jenkins is something which is usually focusing on the continuous integration and continuous development, continuous deployment. But also Jenkins, sometimes, I've been working with Jenkins for a while, and Jenkins can become a monster easily. So Jenkins can become huge, not easy to manage, not easy to extend. So Jenkins is a really nice tool, but you can find tools which are a good company or a good fit for Jenkins. So in this case, we think that that can be Ansible Tower. So with Ansible, you can easily extend, create, for example, jobs that are executed as part of pipelines. There is even a plugin that we are going to show as part of the demo for Tower, in order for running Tower jobs from Jenkins. So usually we say that, let me make sure, okay. Usually we say that Jenkins is more focusing on the development experience or on the developers, while Tower and Ansible is focusing a lot more on the operations, on how to apply the automations and how to apply those things to the environment that you have. So that's a bit the difference that we have. This is what we're going to show later on the demo. But this is like an interesting scenario, because you are used and you know how to work with Git, for example, how to make a checkout, how to make your changes, and then you make a pull request, or you just push the content to a different branch or to a testing branch on your environment. Using that, you can, for example, trigger one of the pipelines that you have in Jenkins, and Jenkins is going to do a few things. So the first thing that Jenkins can do is I can test that not only the application, but also what is related to the network infrastructure is going to work. So I can have like a virtual infrastructure, or I can have a slice, for example, of my load balancer or a VRF on my router, and I can make sure that what I'm going to apply into production, not only for the application, but also for the networking side, is going to work. So Ansible can test those changes. I can notify if this something is working or something is not working, and then I can have a human person which is actually saying, okay, I want to apply this, and let's move this to production. And you can easily extend this with Ansible Tower. So usually you have to write a lot of scripts, a lot of things, maybe using Bash, maybe using complex pipelines. But there is an easy way to do this using Ansible and Ansible Tower. And this is a bit of what we're going to show later. So as I was mentioning, and it's important to have this in mind, Jenkins is focusing on the developers, on the experience that you have while developing, the continuous integration. And then Tower and Ansible is focusing a bit more on the automation, on how to apply those changes and how to work with the operators which are in charge of the infrastructure.
But if we go part by part, let's start first with the control version. Do you use repos? DevOps Barcelona. Well, this is important, but you could be surprised how many companies don't use repos. How many companies overall in the networking part are not using repos at all. All the scripting, all the configuration files, all the playbooks in this case are locally saved. That's not a good idea. If you have any problem, you don't have it. If, for example, I'm taking care of all the Cisco routers and I get ill, nobody knows what happens there. I have all the configurations, I have everything, nobody can work in this way. And for example, if I make a mistake, click, and I change the configuration, I want to come back and I'm not able to when I have it locally, and I change it in a way that I'm not controlling the versions. This is important, and you know already most of you. So, if we go to the second part, is the Jenkins part. We have the repos, we merge some change, and we go for Jenkins to test those changes, right? This is the same for networking. Why not testing our configurations, our equipment? Do the same and test what you are doing and your change before you are going to production. So merge your change, merge your new configuration, then Jenkins will test all your configurations in your environment, creating a new one. Then in that way, you'll be sure about what is happening. If you get the pass, but not if you have the fail. Last but not least is the production part. Now we know we made a change with the software or the configuration file. Then we tested by Jenkins that ran an automation work with Ansible to create all the environment. Now I'm sure that it is working, and I go to production. But first, I give the opportunity to the person that is in control of that to merge all the change to the production branch. In that way, he or she passes the button, the changes are merged, and then Ansible Tower is taking the project automated and updated to have all those changes and go to productions, now that I'm sure that it is working. So, yeah, now we can, also with networking, not just with the rest of applications. What is Ansible for us in this scenario? Well, what does it give us? It gives us the inventories. We were saying before that we have many CLIs, we have many nodes, and we have to attack them one by one. With inventory, we can attack them just with one button. Pass the button, you have all the change in all the inventory with all the nodes. We have the credentials. It's something that we didn't say about, but we have a lot of control with that. Tower gives a lot of control of credentials, also with inventories, dynamic inventories, smart inventories for the ones that know Ansible already. Also the roles. There is a lot of focus right now with networking roles. We are developing a lot of new roles for you to be used. Then you can apply all the benefits of Ansible and the roles also for networking. We have also the user interface that the Tower gives us. In that way, we can delegate. We can give us to our colleagues the opportunity to collaborate, and the API to integrate with all our environment, to integrate with Jenkins, for example, that it is using the API to integrate. So what we found here, a next generation operation networking. What does it mean? That we collaborate, we can delegate, We have the same language. We are talking the same. So it is not more about give me an API. I can ask for it with a button. I can ask for it and design what I need with the network operations. And also, we can use the inventories. We can attack many, many nodes at the same time. All the routers, all the switches, different sites, whatever, just with a button with the user interface, just launching it.
And for the telco person sitting upstairs, this is also useful for us. So we can also implement this kind of automation on a telco environment, because we are not so different to an IT environment, and actually we are trying to come closer. So telco companies are trying to become IT companies and trying to manage the environments on the same way that enterprise and IT has been creating software for the last 25 years. We are always a bit behind in telco, but we are trying to get there. And we are behind for a reason, because things that we do, they are a bit different. So we are not special, but at the same time, we are a bit special. But again, you can use Tower, you can use Ansible to automate all the operations that we are doing on the telco network. Okay, so I know this is the first session after lunch, so I see some of you which are sleeping, but I would like really to wake up, because it's demo time. So demos can fail, a lot of things can happen, but there is a demo, okay? So at least we will try to show something. I wanted to show this one again, because Beatriz was saying that now we can. So now we can the continuous integration and the continuous deployment also for the network, and which is also important. We can also test our automation, because if you are trying to move to really a DevOps way of working, following that methodology, your automation is part of your application. So you actually also need to be testing that your playbooks and that your automation is working. So it's also important to keep that into account. Okay. What are we going to show on the demo? So we have a very kind of simple environment where we have an Ansible Tower instance, we have Jenkins, and then we have what could be like an environment where you will deploy your applications. So we have a load balancer, which in this case is an F5, and we have two application servers, okay, which are going to be running a very simple application, which is the one that we are going to try to update. We have two different environments. We have the development environment and the production environment. In this case, we only have one F5, one load balancer, and we are running on different slices. So we have a slice for the production environment and another slice for the testing or the development environment, okay? But this is like the hardware setup or the infrastructure that we have. And this is what we are running on Jenkins, okay? So we are using Jenkins to, first of all, run the testing. So every time that you are making a commit to the testing branch, we are making sure that Jenkins is going to test whatever code you are submitting to that branch. Then we are going to have a manual approval step. If everything is working, you will receive a message on your Telegram, for example, in this case, and you can manually approve. And when you approve, you're going to merge this to the production branch in your version control system, and then we are also going to deploy to production, okay? So this is what is going to happen on Jenkins, okay? I forgot that for running the tests and for deploying to production, we are, of course, going to use Ansible and Ansible Tower, okay? And now we are focusing a bit on the Ansible perspective. What are we doing from Ansible? So Jenkins is going to call Ansible as part of the pipelines, as part of the jobs. We are going to call Ansible. And we are going to do a few things. So first of all, we are going to check out, using Tower, we are going to check out the testing or the master branch. In this case, master for us means the testing or the live branch, okay? Once we have the information for the latest commit, we are going to configure the F5. So we are going to apply the configuration to the load balancer, and we are going to deploy the application to the application servers that we have. We are going to make sure that everything is working, so we are going to send a notification to the customer or to the owner of the application saying that the merge can be done. And then we are going to do the same on the production environment. So we are going to check out the production branch. We are going to make the merge, because now we know that the changes that we have committed are working. We are going to configure the F5 using a rolling update, so the application is going to be running all the time. We are going to update the servers one server at a time, okay? And also we are going to run the test to make sure that everything is working, okay? And now we are really going to show how this is working. Good luck.
I'll need it. I don't have a video. Okay, let's see first what we have. Well, we have Jenkins, of course. We have our Ansible. I'm going to log. Whoops. Forget the IP, please. We have the F5, and we have our production environment. Our production environment is the same than the testing one. We are using the same F5 and the same hosts. But we are changing the VIP, and we are changing the host IP out of the port to show you just an index, okay? We are going to change the index to show you how it works. So here you can see the host 1, host 2. That's the load balancer, balancing the load. And here is our development environment, 8080. You can see the port is the same, just changing the port. So first, I'm going to merge something.
And actually, while you make the change, everything that we are running here is running on top of Amazon, is running on top of AWS, and everything has been provisioned using Ansible. So this is actually a lab, not exactly this version, but this is a lab that you can provision on your own, and you can go like in a self-paced environment following and understanding how Ansible is working. So you can provision everything because everything that we do is open source.
A ver. Here I have it. I'm going to commit, I'm going to pass. Okay, so let's see what is going on here. Well, it's working, it's working. First, we are testing, creating the development environment, okay? I'm going to show you here the jobs that we have. I'm going to explain you first. Here you can see we have a workflow that is launched by Jenkins. I'm going to show you. This is the workflow. I don't know if you can read it. Here you can see how it is going down. First, we configure the host with the new index. We are just changing the index. Then we add the pool to the development environment for the VIP. Then we create the VIP, and we add the node to the pool. Last but not least, we add the members of the pool, the both nodes, host 1 and host 2. And finally, we test the configuration. How? It's a simple test. Just with an URI, just trying to access the VIP with the 80 port. Okay? So
everything is green so far.
It's going good, it's going good. I will show you how it comes about the change. I told you about the OK. This is the output for Ansible. You can see here the OK, gathering facts is what I told you about all the information that you have from your inventory. It is taking care about the service, if the HTTPD package is there. If it is not there, it is installing it. But it is there because we are using the same host for the production part. But then we are compiling the file because we need it and correcting it. Okay? Now it is done. Let's see if production is working. Yeah, it's working. You can see we change the index. This is production, right? And this is development. We had to move it to production, but we are waiting for the acceptance. But first, I want to show you what we are going to launch. You see the test where we created the development testing environment. You see the deploy approval. If I push, I go to production. We'll merge first all the code to production branch, and then we'll deploy with Ansible all the change. What are we doing there? I'm going to show you the workflow for the production part. I have here all my templates. The templates are the mix with the playbook, the credentials, and the inventory. Then I can mix all and create what I want. And the workflows give us the opportunity to serialize the templates. First, we'll start updating the project. What is the project? The repository that we are using. We are updating all the playbooks that we have from the repository. We have control from Tower about that. We are going to disable the members from the pool. We are going to configure the Apache server for the production host, add the pool members to the pool in production, and test connectivity again. So let's go for Jenkins, upset the test, and we are moving to merge the code to the branch. And we'll start in a bit. The jobs are the execution of what we are doing, of the templates. The demo is here, now it's working, and we have to see the production working. You see, it is working. You can see the button, the circle going up and down. Seems it's working, it's working. Now it shouldn't work. See, it's out of the pools, the nodes. The index is configured, and I'm adding the pools to the member, to the pool. Sorry, the members to the pool. If the test goes OK, it's because it's going to go OK also here. And so emotional. Surprise, surprise. I can show you so many other things if I'm waiting. Well, let's go for production. Well, here we have it. It's the port 80, and here we have the implementation for development. Okay, it did work. What is the good part about this? Well, here we have the inventories. This is easy ones. One's for development, one's for production. And just want to show you something. We are using also the variables at the inventory level. All the hosts that we have here, and we are handling them just with a button, right? That's the good part. So, coming back. You have any question about the demo, about whatever, Ansible, Tower? Many of you know Ansible, for sure, core, but maybe Tower is not so known, right? No question? Easy for us?
Yeah, there's one question over there. There is a mic coming to you.
Hello. Scary. Because you're triggering now with the CI changes in the infrastructure, right? Is there some kind of security concept behind it so that developers that trigger CI with their code changes don't trigger any deletions in the infrastructure if they mess up?
So that's actually something that you will manage either through Git configuration, so you can, for example, manage that on GitHub, or you can also manage that as part of your Jenkins pipelines. So when you're running the pipeline for Jenkins, you might decide if you want this set of files to be always on this version, or you don't want to change it. But actually the security, take into account that Ansible is a language for automating, so you are calling the automations from, let's say, orchestrator, which can be Jenkins in that case. Of course, all the APIs that you have in Jenkins and in Tower, they are secure, they are using SSL, but when it comes to the specific changes that you want to have on the Git, that's something that you need to control at the version control system level. So we are not really doing anything that. But maybe we can discuss that because I'm not sure that was answering your question. So maybe we can discuss that afterwards.
Okay, thanks in general. I'm new to Ansible. I only know what you can do with Terraform, basically. Mm-hmm. And we plan to do some integration with our CI there as well. But then we didn't do it because like automatic appliance of the configuration could trigger like cluster deletions or something like that. But I guess there are for sure some ways to secure that on a higher level or something like that.
Yeah. You will decide when you want to execute your playbooks, your automations. So of course there is a way to manage which user has access to which playbook and to which credentials using Tower. but then you will be the one in charge of deciding when to execute that playbook. So you still need to decide your strategy when it comes to automating the things. So you will be doing the same steps that you are going to be doing manually, but in an automated fashion. But you still have the control over what you want to do.
Tower gives you the opportunity to use role access base, so you have all the control over what you are running for every template and for every inventory that you are updating. So if you're an administrator, you just have to choose who is running who, what, when, and how. So I think it will help you a lot.
Okay, thank you.
But we can talk later if you have any other question.
Any other questions?
For now, I'm all right.
Yeah, there's something that I don't understand, that is counterintuitive for me. So you're basically submitting a change, and then the test is running. So I'm immediately super concerned about rollbacks. So I'm at the office, I submit a change, and that change is submitted to the repository, but it has a bug. So it's breaking basically the development branch. And then if a colleague is sending another urgent change, like I'm concerned as like, what's the rollback procedure? Okay? I always think like running tests should be a step before my code gets into the repository. And the second question is, how do you deal with canary? I've seen like development or production. Is there any way with your tools we can have, A/B testing or some sort of small portion of production to test it? Thank you.
You take one, I take the second one?
For the first one, I'll go, and you go for the second one. Well, for the branches, you have to have your strategy for the branches. For the control version, you have to have a strategy for that. For example, what I use at the moment when I was developing code, we had the master branch, but we have our feature branch when we were developing a feature, for example. Once it was stable, we were merging to the master branch, and then we test all the unit tests and so on. And if it was working, it is there, or it take all the change out. How? With JRead. We used JRead for that. Okay, it is not like merging like we did. For us, it's simple. It's better to use a JRead, for example, a tool like JRead, that it gives you a -1, then it doesn't merge the code. That solves your questions, for example?
Okay, and regarding the canary or the A/B testing, that's something that you will implement using different playbooks. So, for example, if you want to deploy to this virtual IP where you're running your application, you can deploy the application there. But then in that case, again, Ansible and Ansible Tower is just a framework to manage your automation. So that's something that you still need to decide how to do. But in that case, if you're planning to move to Canary or to A/B testing, I would like to talk to you, of course, about Kubernetes and OpenShift, which is the right application for deploying your containers and having multiple versions and do the split between like 70% of the traffic here and 30% of the traffic here. So that's the right tool for doing this. You can, of course, automate that using Ansible playbooks, but there are probably better tools for doing the Canary and the A/B testing. Okay? Any other questions? No? Then we can close.
Well, I have another slide to tell you that, well, with Ansible, you can use the same language. You can go and communicate with the rest of your departments in your company. You can make a culture of community, and you can be more efficient. You can stop the bottlenecks, and you can be faster, all of you, not just the network department. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.